It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. Earlier this week, U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin joined 18 Democratic colleagues to voice concern over President Donald Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs, saying his first-term tariffs cost American farmers $27 billion in exports over just 2 years.
3 months into President Trump's second term, we are checking in with Wisconsin's congressional delegation.
Last week, we spoke with Republican Senator Ron Johnson. Now we turn to Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin. Senator Baldwin, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
It's wonderful to join you. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with tariffs and Wisconsin agriculture. Senator Baldwin, Canada, Mexico, and China, big recipients of exports from farmers here in Wisconsin, according to the State Department of Agriculture. Inputs, of course, fertilizers, farm equipment, prices could go up with tariffs. How do you see those tariffs impacting agriculture here in Wisconsin?
Well, I've talked to many farmers who are still reeling from and recovering from the first Trump trade war in his first term. As you noted, across this country, we lost about $27 billion in exports in just those 2 years of the previous Trump trade war. And people are really terrified that this time it might be worse, in part because of the broad across-the-board tariffs that did not appear to be targeted in any specific way, including with our biggest trading partners, which in Wisconsin are Canada, followed by Mexico, followed by China. The on-again, off-again nature of this round is no comfort to them. I've been hearing from some farmers that chaos is a form of its own tariff, if you will, but they are bracing for significantly increased input costs like fertilizer ingredients, like a dairy farmer I spoke with who gets his glass milk bottles and caps from Canada and will see those prices double, but also the loss of export markets as we have had our dairy industry in particular try to grow its dairy exports, its cheese export markets. And in retaliation, we're seeing countries indicate that they're not interested in U.S. exports to their countries.
You've said elsewhere that you're not universally opposed to tariffs. Targeted tariffs, you say, are fair game in particular situations. When do you see tariffs being the right answer?
So I think when we have examined and investigated and found specific instances of cheating against the international trade rules. And oftentimes this is the PRC, the Chinese government, subsidizing their industry for the sole purpose of trying to do injury to U.S. business. I'll give you an example, a recent one that we're still looking at remedies for, but the U.S. used to dominate in commercial shipbuilding. But last year, the U.S. produced 5 commercial vessels. China produced 1,700. Obviously, there's been an enormous change, and an investigation at the Commerce Department revealed that it was actually skirting the trade rules, cheating, subsidizing. Sometimes China uses forced labor, all sorts of things that can make them able to produce at an artificially low rate and drive other countries out of business. And there, I think it's very appropriate to take actions to try to give us a shot at reaffirming our role in commercial shipbuilding. And that could be docking fees, or it could be tariffs. But I think when it's used in a targeted fashion to create or to address an injustice, then it's very appropriate. But these across-the-board tariffs with our trading partners, with our allies, when there's no cheating that's been alleged, just trading deficits because we buy more than we sell to them, that's a different matter. And it's harming not just farmers, but manufacturers, small businesses, and families who have to buy groceries each week.
Let's talk about who has authority to impose tariffs. Last week, we spoke to Republican Senator Ron Johnson about how tariffs are impacting Wisconsin businesses. We asked if the executive branch should have the sole authority to impose tariffs or if Congress should reclaim that authority. Here's what he said.
If I had more confidence in Congress, I might be a little bit more aggressive in trying to claw that authority back. But when we can't pass budgets, when we don't pass appropriation bills, when we don't take our power of the purse seriously, it's kind of hard to want to claw that back as well.
President Trump has cited some laws passed in Congress, in some cases claiming emergency situations to invoke those laws. Senator Baldwin, do you think Congress should, as some even Republican colleagues have said, should try to take that tariff power back?
Well, first of all, the top line here is that President Trump has decided to paint the economy unilaterally on his own with these across-the-board tariffs. He is the one who should be answering to the American people, first and foremost. But that said, of course, Congress has a role to be a check and a balance to this president. And you saw a few weeks back the Senate taking a vote and winning that vote, by the way, on a resolution to take away the emergency declaration that President Trump made to justify his across-the-board tariffs against Canada. And we were successful in that. We had a handful of Republicans join all Democrats in voting for that resolution. Now, the House hasn't seen fit to take it up, but they could. And so we could fight back more effectively. But I would say, especially to Senator Johnson's comments, that I'm seeing House and Senate Republicans willingly give up their powers of the purse strings to this president. And we need to be rather an effective check and balance. There are three branches of government, and the Congress needs to assert itself in this arena. And when the president overreaches in legal or constitutional terms, the courts need to assert their role as a check and balance.
We're talking with Wisconsin U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. Staying with that check and balance issue, we've got immigration cases where the White House seems to be foot-dragging or ignoring court orders right now, invoking a questionable authority related to First Amendment issues, targeting colleges over free expression there, law firms because of past actions involving them in cases involving Donald Trump. Are you worried about the loss of checks and balances that we're moving toward essentially a presidential decree system of government?
The warning signs are all there. And I note on the immigration front, there was recently, as last week, a 9-0 Supreme Court decision that the Trump administration needed to work to facilitate the return of an immigrant. And the administration is blatantly disregarding this ruling. It is a constitutional crisis when the administration, when a president, no matter what party, begins to flout decisions by courts at any level. But this is very troubling. And just like too many of my Republican colleagues in the House and Senate, literally just giving up their power, their Article 1 constitutional power to this president, we cannot see the same thing unfold on the side of the judiciary and our judicial system, our court system.
What do you see as options to do about that as a senator in the minority party?
Yes, well, as I described earlier, we do have a handful of Republicans who are sounding the alarm and who joined us when we challenged Trump's across-the-board tariffs against Canada. There's no reason why we can't bring forth another resolution when we reconvene to bring into question the other across-the-board tariffs. But that will require, in the Senate, Republicans joining with Democrats to reassert their powers.
Briefly, we've got a reconciliation-based budget moving through Congress now. You've raised alarms over proposed cuts to the Energy and Commerce Committee funding. That includes Medicaid, $880 billion. Some of that would have to come from Medicaid. What are your concerns?
I have been hosting town hall meetings and roundtables with Wisconsinites who would be impacted by any significant defunding of the Medicaid program. And I can tell you that these stories are absolutely compelling, and we have to fight tooth and nail to protect Medicaid. Medicaid serves the health care needs of about a third of all children, about 8 million seniors, including in Wisconsin. The majority of seniors in nursing home care have their care paid for by Medicaid, and 15 million children and adults with disabilities who need both health care and other specialized services. Hearing from Wisconsinites who rely on Medicaid for breast cancer treatment or for wheelchair access if they have a disability that requires that mobility aid, would not have other options without Medicaid. And so telling their story is a huge part of fighting back, of working to protect Medicaid. And I want to remind folks that, the last time we did budget reconciliation under President Trump in his first term, they had the Affordable Care Act on the chopping block. And because people organized, told their stories, spoke out, rallied, we were able to prevent that from happening. We can do so again, but it's going to take all of us.
Senator Baldwin, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That is Democratic U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin, talking to us about tariffs, Medicaid, and more 3 months into President Donald Trump's second term. Is there a question you'd like posed to a member of Wisconsin's congressional delegation, Democrat or Republican? All of them? Let us know about it. Email wisconsintoday@wpr.org. That's wisconsintoday@wpr.org.
Coming up on Wisconsin Today, it's an uneasy time for Wisconsin home buyers with the looming impact of President Trump's tariffs and rising prices.
Typically, when you see prices go up, the least of us are the ones who see the impacts of that first.
A check of the housing market, that's next on WPR News. It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. Is now a good time to buy a house? How much will home construction costs go up in case of a trade war?
While President Trump has walked back some of the tariffs before they were set to go into effect, buyers and sellers may feel uneasy about the impact of tariffs on the housing market and rising prices on everyday goods.
In just a bit, we'll hear from a Milwaukee nonprofit that's helping first-time home buyers navigate these times.
But first, we check in with the home building industry. Brad Boyks is executive director of the Wisconsin Builders Association, and David Bellman is president of Bellman Homes and founder of Bellman Builders in Waukesha. Brad and David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Brad, starting with you, tariffs on imported construction materials like steel, like aluminum, like lumber, that can all drive up the cost of building and renovating homes. What are you seeing now?
Yeah, it's a concern. We have spent a great deal of time on the local, state, and federal levels, really trying to work all units of government to try to bring down the cost of housing. And certainly, where we stand today, we're talking about tariffs, and, that's going to have an increase to the cost of housing element to it. So certainly something that we're tracking, we're concerned with, but the overall goal has been, for the last few years is to look for ways to try to bring down that cost of housing. And this is certainly a concern.
The National Association of Home Builders and Wells Fargo had some numbers. Cost of building materials has already risen by 34% since December of 2020, so far outpacing inflation. And then last month, they did their survey, March survey, finding that builders estimated a typical cost effect from recent tariff actions at $9,200 a home. What can you tell us there? What is the latest sentiment?
Yeah, and I think with tariffs, you look at about 7% of what goes into a home, comes from outside of the United States. So therefore, if you have tariffs, that's gonna have an effect on that cost of housing. So I think that coupled with, there certainly have been some things going on, especially on the national level, trying to get more access to domestic-based timber, trying to cut through some regulation and red tape as it concerns housing. Those are on the positive side of the equations. Those are things that we're very hopeful. I mean, those have all been announced since January. Going to take some time to get those into the pipe and have those be effective. But, there are, some caution on the tariff front of the equation. But there's also some things going on the national level that we hope are going to have a positive impact and actually help to bring down the cost of housing.
And David, on the home building side of things, building anything takes many months to years. What are you seeing out there? Are projects on hold? Are they being finished now?
A lot of consumers have been concerned. We've seen some that we were working with that are kind of putting things on pause. But we're encouraging other consumers, if you're ready to get going now, because we just see the cost, only going up in the future. So it's better to kind of deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't know. The other thing you have to consider is that most of our suppliers and our manufacturers, they already have their products in inventory right now. So there's anywhere from a 3 to 4 month supply of product that's already been imported. And then the last thing I'll say is if you're a consumer and you're looking to buy a home and you're looking at a home that's already built, like a model home, those are already built at older prices. So there's certainly opportunity to avoid much of the tariffs if you're smart about how you purchase.
There is some raw products sitting in a warehouse somewhere. Can you tease that out a bit? How much of the cost of a new build is related to materials?
It's hard to give you an exact number, but I would say it's probably maybe around 60%, if I could, wager a guess on that. And again, as Brad mentioned, with the tariffs, we're only seeing about 7.5% of the product for a new home build being imported. And additionally, the other kind of good news is that last week we were informed that building materials that were brought in from Canada and Mexico are also exempt from the tariff, which would include additional tariffs from lumber, which is a big one.
Brad, back to you. You said something here at the outset that, what could bring down the price of homes? You're seeing some glimmers of perhaps good news out there. What are you seeing?
We see some of the biggest gains that can be made on the advocacy side of the equation really is on the local level. And that is communities, actively wanting more housing and actively taking a look at what they allow and maybe don't allow. We have communities that, if they want to encourage more housing, they're allowing smaller lot sizes. They are allowing smaller homes to be built on those smaller lots, which, is the best way to directly bring down the cost of that house. The infrastructure that goes in when you build a home. Most people may not know, that is a price. The price of that is bore by the developer and the builder. So they're paying for that. And then, the consumer is paying for that, obviously, when they close on the home. And then all of that material is dedicated over to a municipality. Very expensive to do that. So those smaller lots and smaller homes, and then local communities taking a look at what they charge, on the building permit side or any of the many fees that go into doing construction and building out a subdivision. That's really going to be, we see as some of the biggest drivers, and having communities take a look at all of that and making known to our members throughout the state that they want more housing, and being vocal about that, I think is really, that's kind of the way that we see as the clearest way and the clearest path to have a really direct effect on the end cost of the lot and the home.
David, could you speak to that as well? Do you engage in communities that are actively wanting more housing and perhaps loosening up some ordinances or relieving some red tape?
Absolutely. It is a lot of it at the local level, as Brad said. The National Association of Home Builders did a study and said that the average cost added to a new home due to local, state, and federal regulation is $93,870. So we're talking about nearly $100,000 before you even put a shovel in the ground. Now at the local level, we're seeing a lot of high minimum standards, which means that the house has to be bigger. That means it's going to be more expensive. We're seeking municipalities where they're going to allow us higher density, where we can get homes a little closer together, utilize more of the land, remove some of these additional restrictions, like having a municipality rather mandate the type of siding and the type of stone and percentages of those kind of things, or having sidewalks on both sides of the street versus one side of the street, or how wide the road is.
So if you're a client, you have wanted to build, you're trying to build, and you see what's happening at the federal level, and you say, okay, David, this either we got to go now, or we're not going to go perhaps for years. Are your clients feeling a bit of whiplash here, a little bit jolty? Is this an unnerving time for them?
Yeah, there's definitely nervousness out there with the consumers. At the beginning of the year, before the inauguration, I thought we were going to have probably the busiest year we ever were going to have. The number of people calling and contacting us was off the charts. And then a lot of them, when the tariffs kind of came out, got a little scared. Change scares people, of course. But again, the one thing that's good about all of this is that a lot of people's homes, if they have a home already, are worth tremendously more than they were in the past. So a lot of people have tons of equity. We've seen more cash buyers than I've ever had in the history of my company buying houses because they own their house outright. It's worth so much more money. And so when they sell their existing home, they're able to put that into the new home. So even though the new home costs more, it's kind of relative because they're getting so much more for the existing home. The problem, though, is the first-time buyers. They're the ones that are going to be probably the most affected because they don't have that equity to tap off of. So it is more challenging for that first-time homeowner to get that home.
Also, the upward pressure on those items that are sitting in the warehouse, the siding, the stones, the insulation, the shingles, the HVAC equipment, will, even though they're there and ready to go, do you see builders marking up prices in preparation for what the future holds?
If you're a smart business owner, you've got to watch this and keep an eye on it. A lot of builders are doing some different strategies, like putting clauses in their contracts that are very transparent, which is nice for the consumer. So they're showing like, this is the rate or the price that we have right now under contract. And if it goes up, like we have a 3% guarantee that will go up the first 3% and you don't see it. And then after that, if it goes beyond that, then you're going to pay the difference and we'll show you our books and we'll figure it out. So there are a lot of different strategies to work through it. And I think a lot of builders are working with their clients on it. And then the other big thing is just trying to get decisions right away so we can order product, lock in the price, and not even make it an issue for our customers.
Well, David and Brad, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was Brad Boyks, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Builders Association, and David Bellman, founder of Bellman Builders in Waukesha. They shared how builders are reacting to President Trump's tariffs. We heard David say that more people than ever are coming to him with the all cash to build that new home due to the vast home equity they've built up, but that's not the case for first-time homebuyers. For this perspective on the housing economy, we turn to Dee Kemp, Vice President of Programs for Axe Housing. It's a nonprofit helping families of color build wealth in Milwaukee and Beloit through home purchase and rehab services. Dee, thanks for joining us.
Always happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into this, can you explain a bit about what Axe Housing does for potential homeowners, especially in Milwaukee?
Absolutely. At Axe, we pride ourselves on being a one stop shop for home ownership, which for a first time home buyer can be incredibly confusing and daunting process. So we want to help make that easier for people by having all the services that you need under one roof to really get yourself through this process effectively. To do that, we provide home buyer coaching, which is really the element of our program where we're helping you look at your credit, look at your finances, build a budget that puts you in a position to be that future homeowner. We also have a full real estate brokerage. We offer lending, and we have a development arm that is focused on creating affordable housing opportunities. So, one great thing about being a program participant at Axe is that we're going to make sure you have access to some great inventory.
Hmm. Have your clients' needs changed since the Trump administration started implementing tariffs? What do you see?
Well, I think we're all kind of sitting back trying to see what the impact overall is going to be, but it's never a good thing when there's uncertainty in the market. And typically, when you see prices go up, the least of us are the ones who see the impacts of that first. So, working with low and moderate income families, as they see their day to day costs go up, that is really cutting into the budget for them to have the ability to save
Hmm.
for that first house. So, we're seeing families who that process is just going to take longer because their other expenses are rising.
I mean, buying a home, it's already stressful. And then you have, on top of this, the current times with worries about tariffs and a tight housing supply. That too can be very nerve wracking. Do you think your clients will feel like they can leave renting behind in this moment?
That's a decision that every family really has to make for themselves. What I found is that there is no expiration date on the American dream and no challenge that's going to stop families from dreaming of making their own lives better. So, despite any of the challenges that are in the environment, when you have 80% of renters in Milwaukee who are saying best case scenario for them is to be a homeowner, that desire is still there. We just have to work that much harder to make sure that those opportunities are still accessible for folks that are low and moderate income.
And X Housing rehabs homes as well, is that right?
Correct. So tariffs definitely are going to have an impact on the price of doing renovations.
Yeah, your costs would need to probably go up for, steel, aluminum, lumber. I mean, even like the guts of the home, the heating and the plumbing.
And not just that, because if most families approach home ownership like, what am I going to pay on a monthly basis? So you're already coming into an environment where we have housing shortages. We need more building of all types of housing, including affordable housing. Now you have stress on all of the home builders who have higher expenses, and those folks who are trying to do an affordable rehab have all these additional expenses as well. What I think we're not considering is that when I get into that new house, I have to get a refrigerator or a stove, and those things are going to cost more because of tariffs. So, when you talk about that monthly expense for a family, it's not just that principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It's also all of the things inside your house that actually make it a home where we're seeing the cost go up for our families.
What is your advice in this moment for potential home buyers, the people you are coaching to say, yes, go after the American dream. You can do this. What advice do you give?
The great thing is that the principles of budgeting and habits, good habits, have not changed. So we can really fall back on our bread and butter, which is to teach people how to effectively budget. And hey, right now you do have to be a little bit more creative. Even me personally, the last time I was at the grocery store, I was like, okay, I need to start couponing or something
Mm. Yeah.
because I'm spending way more than what I did a year ago. So, really, just working with families to one, understand the environment that they're in so that they're not afraid to move forward in this environment, but also really drilling down on the habits and behaviors that are going to lead them to successful home ownership. And those are the same habits and behaviors that allow you to adapt when the environment is very volatile, like we see it is right now.
I was reading some fresh Redfin information that's saying Midwestern cities like Milwaukee and Detroit are seeing some of the most price growth due to affordable real estate and increased demand. Are you seeing some of that in Milwaukee?
Oh, absolutely. I consistently, when I'm out in the community, I am reminding people who live in Milwaukee and who live in Beloit how attractive our communities are to other people because we are still affordable, which means that our citizens need to take advantage of this point in time to make sure that we're the ones who own our properties. I believe strongly that Milwaukee should be owned by Milwaukeeans. Never give up on dreams of home ownership. It is absolutely attainable. I think we all do a great job of talking ourselves out of our blessings, but I like to always think positively. And I believe that when there's a will, there's a way, and ACTS is here and views it as a privilege to support families in their journey to home ownership. So don't be scared. Come and see us. No matter what the environment, we can figure out a way to get this done.
Dee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That was Dee Kemp, Vice President of Programs for ACTS Housing, a Milwaukee nonprofit supporting first-time homebuyers. Earlier, we heard from Brad Boyks at the Wisconsin Builders Association and builder David Bellman in Waukesha.
Coming up, UW Stout takes the field with their first women's flag football team.
It's unlike any other sport that I've ever gotten to play. I think a lot of young girls will love it, and I think it'll continue to develop into something really special.
We'll meet players and a coach from UW Stout next on Wisconsin Today. You're listening to Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Farrett.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. Now it's time for Wisconsin Life. Here's producer Maureen McCullum with a story about navigating life after losing a loved one.
We all grieve differently, often vacillating between these worlds of wanting to talk about our loved ones to wanting to be left alone in silence. Writer Yeo Lor of Eau Claire gets this. She tells us about finding her place while grieving the loss of her sister, Jur Lor.
When my little sister Zhao was dying, I was not prepared for the amount of support my family would receive and the number of people who would come from all over the country to celebrate her life. My sister was loved by many. At her funeral, people would say, "You don't remember me, but I hung out with your sister in middle school." Or they'd say, "We took care of you and your siblings when you were very little." Then there was a group of women from my sister's hair academy days. Zhao had a great sense of humor. She sure did. The outpouring of compassion was incredible, yet overwhelming. Almost daily, I would run into someone wanting to know how my family was doing and how they could support us. On days when my cup was full, I could engage. But most days, I poured from an empty cup. What I needed was time to do everyday activities, like picking up a box of cereal or returning an overdue library book, without being immersed in my sorrows. When it felt like I couldn't escape the check-ins, questions, or looks, I found the largest rock in the Chippewa Valley, crawled under it, and hid. I sat with my thoughts, and when the days were especially hard, I took solace in writing to my sister. One day, my partner reminded me that, before everything happened, we had bought tickets to a Brewers game. I hesitated, but he reassured me no one would know me 4 hours from home. I went along, and my partner was right. In a stadium full of strangers, a bit of joy and ease crept into my soul. I didn't have to relive the memories of my sister dying. Baseball was just baseball. At home, I came out from under my rock to explore spaces that could hold me until I was ready to return to familiar grounds. Where could I socialize but not feel obligated to share my grief? I discovered a group called Tarot Circle Eau Claire that had been gathering for the past 10 years to discuss this deck of cards often used for self-reflection. When I told them I'd drawn the High Priestess almost every day since my sister died, someone said I had a stalker card, and we laughed. Then we played a storytelling game, followed by reading a spread. My spread pointed to self-care. The following week, a plant shop called Verdant Curiosities was hosting a community plant swap in honor of one of their owners' birthdays. Before I knew it, I was walking into the shop with an armful of plant cuttings. Someone pointed to one and asked what it was. Her name is Hope, I responded. I've always wanted hope, they said. Same here. Another gem I had discovered was an herbal apothecary called Moonbees, hidden inside an old tire factory that was turned into shops. Amazed at the wall of herbs and spices, I jokingly asked one of the owners if there was a magic tea for grief and heartache. They kindly offered to help me select herbs to make my very own. There are still days where I hang out under my rock and write to my sister. Then there are days I set aside my grief and reconnect with my community through new spaces and strangers who may someday not be strangers anymore. Every once in a while, I find comfort in the familiar faces and how are yous and I'm so sorries. But I know when I need to retreat, there are spaces to hold me.
Writer Yia Lore of Eau Claire brought us that story on grieving her sister, Sure Lore. Wisconsin Life is a co-production of Wisconsin Public Radio and PBS Wisconsin in partnership with Wisconsin Humanities. Additional support comes from Lowell and Mary Peterson of Appleton. I'm Maureen McCullum.
This is Wisconsin Today.
The University of Wisconsin Stout is the first UW system school offering women's flag football as an athletic program.
The NFL and the Minnesota Vikings contributed to a partnership with UW Stout and 5 other NCAA schools to form a competitive league at the Division III level.
Bryant and Stratton College in Wauwatosa also has a women's flag football team, while Marian University, Beloit College, and Ripon College are among other private colleges in the state that plan to form teams in the future.
The sport of flag football is rising in popularity and will be part of the 2028 Olympic Summer Games in Los Angeles.
Stout just hosted the second competition of the season last weekend, with the Blue Devils splitting a 4-game jamboree on their Menominee campus on Saturday, 2-2.
We're checking in on the growth of the sport and how it's taking hold at UW Stout with the coach and 2 players.
Dewey Natz is Director of Athletics and head women's flag football coach at UW Stout. Allison Letcher is a senior on the women's flag football team who plays quarterback, and Adeline Lehman is a grad student from Mosinee, also on the team. I talked to them earlier this week. All right, Dewey, how did UW Stout get involved in this partnership with the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings, and these other colleges to start this flag football program?
For over a year, we've been talking about it, but it really got more invested last spring and into the summer with talks with schools that were interested in be a part of it. And Minnesota Vikings organization. And early on, the Packers were very involved as well. They have the draft coming up this month, so they're a little busy with that. So It's been a process, but it's been a great process. And now, because of their support, we're on the field and we're playing already, which is fantastic.
Allison, you've had a successful career at Stout on the basketball team, a Final Four, I understand. What made you want to add flag football to your athletic resume?
I've loved flag football, just actually football in general since I was a little girl. Always asked my parents if I could play tackle football and do those sorts of things, but never really wanted to get injured for other sports. So when I saw flag football have the flyers at Stout and get the opportunity to play football without as much of the physicality as tackle brings, I was like, this is right up my alley. I got so excited, and throughout the whole basketball season, I kept thinking about how exciting it's going to be to roll into a new sport, and it's been great these past couple weeks. Yeah.
Adeline, you've done track and field in the past. What brought you into flag football?
I grew up in a football family, and so when I was little, I remember playing catch and I guess tackling my brother. And then this early January, I think it was, I saw on TV there was a lot of like commercials for flag football and specifically women's flag football. And so seeing that and also seeing the flyers, I was like, I really need to give this a try.
And Dewey, lay out for us, for people who might be familiar with 11-on-11 tackle football, give us a taste of the different rules in this 5-on-5 non-contact flag version.
But a lot of the basic rules are the same as the tackle game of football. A little bit of variations with in our league decided to go 5-on-5 this year, so 5 versus 5. Everybody's eligible, including the center, which is a little bit different than the 11-on-11 version where linemen can't be eligible and go for pass. But one of the other key pieces of it is the ball hits the ground, the ball is dead. And a lot of that is to prevent people from jumping and diving on the ground without pads and helmets and different things. So a lot of the different rules are safety based. First down, the field that we're using this year is at 25 yards for a first down. So that's a little bit different. But as far as 4 plays to get a first down, we are not punting during this league this spring, just because of the short variation. I know on normal flag, that's a part of it. We just, if you want to punt, you just say, we're going to punt, put the ball at the 5 on the other end, coming back your direction. So a lot of the rules are a little bit safety based, I guess. You can't flag guard. That's to prevent somebody from reaching down and doing some different things. So there's a little bit of that, but for the most part, it's football without pads.
Allison, what were some of the biggest things to learn coming into the game? You're an experienced athlete. You're obviously very familiar with the game of football. What kind of things did you have to do to catch on to this game?
You know, from the beginning, I wanted to be one of the quarterbacks for the team, so I had to adapt to the rules that come along with that. You know, there's a rusher that can only stand at the 7-yard line, and they can rush whenever, but I only have 5 seconds to throw, so, I kind of have to decide, am I going to take off when there's a rusher coming, or am I going to sit back in the pocket and let the seconds count? And I really had to learn the kind of route development that happens too with football. I haven't, dove deep into the sport as much as I've had to in these past couple of weeks. So it's been really fun to watch my, wide receivers develop, and then also just follow the rushing rules and the second count rules too. So.
And Adeline, what was new or unfamiliar for you with the sport that you had to pick up?
I think one new rule that is a little different is there's certain times when you can't run the ball. And even this past weekend, only being the second week of actually playing, we kind of started to actually learn that rule. So it's just overall, there's a lot of new rules that are different. So it's kind of a learning curve in that sense.
We're talking about the first ever women's flag football team at UW Stout. Our guests are Coach Dewey Natz and players Allison Letcher and Adeline Lehman. Dewey, what is your hope for the flag football program at Stout in the years to come?
Well, looking into the future, I think this season has exceeded any and all expectations that we maybe would have even had thinking about this last fall when we started looking at having this and participating. We wanted to be leaders in this opportunity and providing the opportunity for women to participate in a sport that they haven't been able to do before. And I think our players in some of the other interviews have talked about the fact that by them playing, they hope that this opens doors down the road for young girls out there in the state of Wisconsin and Minnesota and across the land that, hey, give football a shot. You can. And so my hope is it continues to grow, and all indications are it's going to explode. And we've seen that at the high school level and different places already. So my hope is it continues to go that way, and we are excited that we're a part of it right now already. So,
Adeline, I was at the Jamboree there on Saturday, full disclosure. I have a daughter on one of the other teams that was at the event. I was impressed. A lot of people there, a lot of enthusiasm from UW Stout fans and your team. What kind of reaction, what kind of support have you seen so far, Adeline?
Definitely a lot of support and interest, not only in us girls, but also in fans. I think this weekend there was a really great environment. A lot of people showed up to support us. So that's been really cool. Yeah.
And Allison, are you finding yourself recruiting, watching for other potential flag football players at school?
I definitely, at the beginning of the season, was looking at different sports and, trying to be like, you seem athletic, come play flag football and this and that. But at the end of the day, the team that ended up getting put together has been absolutely incredible. And I've loved getting to meet and develop relationships with, the soccer players and also people that have never played a sport before. It's been incredible. And Dewey has done a great job putting the team together. And I'm sure he'll continue to do a great job.
Dewey, we're seeing more attention at the high school level. The Packers have put some funding into that. We're hearing reports of big growth at the high school level for girls flag football. Are you seeing that kind of infrastructure building out there that's going to eventually, help you at the college level?
Yeah, and I think that's the initial piece from the NFL and the Vikings and the Packers organizations of providing that seed money to get us going. Without that, I think we would still be just talking about it this year. When you look at sports modules and adding sports, there's pieces of that puzzle that need to come together. And one of them is the financial piece. And because of their support, we were able to move right away and have a competitive season this year. So in the future now, we will work on budgeting and planning to have this team continue to be part of our sports module and how we do that and support it financially, so we can continue to grow.
And I want to get a pitch from both of the athletes now. If you had a chance to talk to high school students, maybe girls, what would you say to encourage them to try flag football? Adeline, let's start with you.
Oh, gosh. I would just, for lack of a better word, I would just say it's so fun. There's really not another sport for women like it. So I think just try it, and if you don't like it, you can, learn from that and then not do it. But I have a feeling a lot of people would fall in love with flag football.
And Allison, your pitch.
I agree. I think you just got to give it a shot, and it's unlike any other sport that I've ever gotten to play. I think a lot of young girls will love it, and I think it'll continue to develop into something really special.
And we'll leave it there. Allison, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Adeline, thanks for being with us.
Yes, thank you.
And Dewey, thank you, and have a great tournament.
Thank you.
Dewey Natz is the Director of Athletics and head coach of UW Stout's first ever women's flag football team. And Allison Letcher and Adeline Lehman are players on the inaugural Blue Devils team. Inspired by our conversation about the new Wisconsin beer, brats, and cheese guidebook, we asked you about your memorable road trips.
We heard from Ellen in Forestville, who just returned from a 2-week road trip out east. Ellen wants to give a shout out to the Waterfront Bar and Grill in Kewanee. Ellen says they have the best beer, brat, and cheese soup in all of Wisconsin.
And Ellen recommends a trip to Door County to sample the breweries, cheesemakers, and the winemaking scene as well.
Thanks so much, Ellen. And we're still collecting your stories about favorite road trips in Wisconsin. Email wisconsintoday@wpr.org, or you can call or text us at 888-642-0232.
Wisconsin Today producers include Mackenzie Crummy, Avery Lee Rogers, and Lauren Cox. Our technical directors are Sarah Hopeful and Tyler Ditter. Learn more about us at wpr.org/Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Farrett.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. You're listening to WPR News.